Hey guys, welcome to an episode of REISmartTalk. I got Jeremy Davis here with me, great friend in the community, runs investor and semester coaching program. And today he is going to be talking about the evolution of a wholesaler and then what it's going to look like here in 2026 to use creative finance. So I'm going to switch it over real quick to Jeremy, let him introduce himself, tell you a little bit about himself, and then we're going to get into what that wholesale evolution's been looking like. So Jeremy, I'm going to let you take it away for a second.
Bro, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it. Hopefully I can add a little bit of value to your audience. I think I can, and we'll go from there. But yeah, a little bit of background about myself. 2012 was when I started my real estate journey. And I would say, like, unofficially, I started back in 2012, but really when COVID hit is when I went really all in. What brought me back in time was I actually had a motorcycle accident. I lived in California, I lived in Los Angeles, and I got hit head on by a Harley in the canyons of Malibu. The Harley lost control, hit me head on, sent me 150 feet off the cliff, and I broke my back, my arms, my shoulders, and I got airlifted out actually. And I had a very, very long 2-year recovery, painkiller addiction and all that stuff. And 2012 rolls around and I go, I want to get into real estate. Like, it's time. You remember, we were out of the Great Recession. We can see that the bottom had been hit and I was ready to get into it. So I went to real estate agents because I thought that's what I needed to do. And all of those agents told me the same thing. They said, you've got cash saved up, you've got really good credit, but you don't have any work history and you're not going to be able to buy a house. I took that answer as the only truth that must exist out there. And I actually went back and started serving tables. I went to hospitality because I was trying to find more of a consistent W-2. So now fast forward, I did a little bit of dabbling in real estate at that point. I was helping people with some fix and flips. I was also lending money a little bit here and there, but I was learning about creative finance throughout the 2012 to 2020 era. But I wasn't committed. I was dabbling in it. I had dipped my toes in it. I was playing around with it, but I wasn't ready to go all in. So COVID hits. I'm in Los Angeles with my wife. We just got married and I'm over it. I'm just done. I'm like, all right, we just don't belong here any longer. Let's get out of this area. So my wife and I made a calculated decision. We moved to Salt Lake. What we did is we pulled up a map and I said to her, I go, like, we're more on the conservative side, right? We lean that direction politically. And I go, if we are looking to move out of California, chances are a lot of other people like us are looking to do the exact same thing. I look on a map and I go, okay, we've got Washington, Oregon, and California. People are going to start moving east. Where are they going to be moving? They're going to hit Idaho. They're going to hit Phoenix. They're going to hit Salt Lake. And then what's the backstop of Salt Lake? It's Denver. It's Colorado, which is another more liberal state, which means that they're not going to continue that way. So I kind of said, it's probably all going to converge in Salt Lake. And it did. Salt Lake was the fastest appreciating market in the nation. And I made a lot of money by doing wholesale and flips out here. So 2020 rolls around. I make my way to Salt Lake and I start wholesaling and I start flipping. And in that beginning stages, the conversation of creative finance never really existed at all. And then in 2020 to 2022, interest rates were awesome, right? They were 2.5%, which is also what stemmed this real estate market to do what it did. So at that time, number one, sellers knew that they controlled the market, right? Whatever they wanted, they can get for it because their house was worth so much. Then their interest rates started adding value to that same exact property. Not only did the property appreciate, but now you've got a 2.5% interest rate on a property that is also appreciating. It's a perfect storm to make that house be worth so much money. Now, this is right around the time, I'd say 2022 is around the time when creative finance started to become more of a popular conversation. And for me, going back in time, like, I shout out to Pace Morby, a good friend of mine, mentor of mine. When I joined Sub 2, I already had experience in real estate and I wanted to add more creative finance tools to my tool belt. When I joined Sub 2, I actually became one of the top leaders in there. I ran multiple regions across the nation and I helped out probably well over 1,000 students do deals. And in that period of time, I started seeing one major trend coming from not just that community, but other coaching communities as well, which is why I kind of decided to build out the investor semester. Was a lot of those coaching communities, they get you in there, they get you to watch some modules, but then it's really nothing more about showing up to the Zooms. And for me, I was like, I would love to have like a structured curriculum. And what I did is I built out the investor semester based around freshman, sophomore, junior, senior. And really it's a structured education around freshmen being wholesaling, and more specifically, wholesaling down the sweat equity path, right? Which is, we know as cold calling, door knocking, really people that have a limited budget. Because what I identified was a lot of people that get into wholesaling, they don't have a lot of money. No offense against you if you're broke, but the appeal of wholesaling is you can do this without any money, without your own credit, without any cash. You can do this business. And the truth is, yes, that is real. That is possible. But the people that really scale their business and actually start really making the money in this business are the people that invest into marketing, doing things like direct mail and inbound leads and stuff like that. I thought, what the freshman semester, I'm going to build that around the sweat equity position, the new wholesaler. Let's not spend a lot of money in the early stages. Let's try to actually get traction, start generating leads, start practicing on offers, and actually start getting deals. Then sophomore moves into more scalability, right? Now we're going to start focusing on higher level campaigns. That's where direct mail, inbound, PPC, Google ads, all that kind of stuff. That's where that's going to start to filter in towards the sophomore year. Junior year, all about creative finance. Why am I not teaching creative finance early on? Creative finance can actually be toxic to a wholesale operation if it is introduced too early. Okay, so, and I'll get into that with you here in a second, but like creative finance is an awesome strategy to build a portfolio, but most deals, not all, but most deals require an entry fee. Okay, and that means it's going to cost $10,000, $20,000, $50 to get into a creative finance deal. Why is that? Because sometimes you have to pay off the arrears, right? Sometimes there's back taxes. Whatever the reason may be, you're coming out of pocket to buy that property. And I'm fine spending $50,000 on a property that's worth 500 something grand that has a 2.5% interest rate. But until I have consistent cash flow coming in from active income, AKA wholesaling cash deals, that $50,000 would be so much more valuable to me to reinvest it into more marketing to make more money rather than, oh yeah, I get to cash flow $200 a month off this property. That's awesome and that's a lot of my portfolio. No offense against my portfolio. My portfolio is a multi-million dollar portfolio, but I don't feel like a millionaire with my cash flow because it's only like a few $100s here and there per door. But I also know that if I sold my portfolio, I'd be a multi-millionaire, but I'm not there yet. What I explain to a lot of wholesalers, I go, we want to get you to become cash heavy. We want you to be cash rich because what the goal here is, and you're going to understand this exactly, is that there are metrics that you're going to follow in marketing that if I know if I spend $1 on marketing, I can expect to make $3 back, for example, right? That's what we call a 3x margin or a 3x return. What a lot of new investors, a lot of new wholesalers are afraid to do is they are afraid to invest capital into marketing because they typically don't have a strong sales process. They don't feel good about that. If they got a bunch of leads that came in all at once and they're in the weeds trying to figure out, underwrite, give offers and stuff like that, they're afraid to spend good money on leads if they're not able to close those leads. So the whole reason that I do the freshman semester followed by the sophomore then leads into a stronger sales process, setting the expectations better, actually having credibility packets that get sent out, having better transaction coordination, things like that, to where if you get a deal under contract, you are not now 100% focused on that deal, and then everything else falls through the cracks. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And Jeremy, I love what you're saying, and I love the thought process behind this. The freshman, then junior, just think of it as basic school, and it is. And if you go back and you think of high school, and if we take a math class, for example, if you try and jump into trigonometry or calculus before you've taken algebra 1, algebra 2, geometry, the basic math classes, you're going to be totally lost. You don't have that foundation. You don't have that just basic understanding. So with that, guys, when you listen to this and you're listening to Jeremy, it's so important that you don't attempt to become this crazy advanced person before you're ready to. You might get in, see other coaching programs. You might see the YouTube videos of these gurus out here, and they're like, oh, jump into creative finance. You can hold the note or you can structure it. You'll set the terms up the way that you want. And all this stuff, if that's not making sense to you, don't do it. Don't try and go for the home run on round one because you're not going to be successful. There's a reason that Jeremy's talking about his different levels, his freshman, sophomore, junior, because you have to have the understanding, just like any schooling system you've ever done in your life, you have to build that out. So I want to go back to the freshman year because I think this is really important for people who are getting into investing. If you were working with a brand new person, they came to you, they said, Jeremy, I've never done a deal in my life. I don't even know what a contract really should look like. I tried making one using ChatGPT, but I don't even know the prompt for it. I'm looking to just get some cash. I think the cash flow, the active cash flow is really, really important. What would be your suggestion to that person who is that raw and that new?
Yeah. Okay. Great question. And I'll give you what I think is a good answer. So right now we're facing a fork in the road. Okay. So that means that on one side of that fork is going to be not spending money, but spending time. Mm-hmm. And then the other side of that fork is going to be spending money and not spending time. Okay. I'll be very transparent here. The vast majority of wholesalers that try to use more sweat equity, they're trying to use more of their time than their capital. Those are the people that typically fizzle out. We have a high washout rate in this business. When you watch YouTube videos and you think that the guru stories are the truth and you're drinking that Kool-Aid, unfortunately, that's not the reality here. The reality here is that you are going to have to grind. And if you are grinding at generating leads, you're not grinding at giving offers. You're not grinding at dispoing deals. You're grinding at actually just trying to find a lead in the first place, which is why I always say to my students, and by the way, going back, I also used to own a VA company. I think I should add into that is that having a VA company, we had in Zambales, Philippines, we had an actual physical building. We had 100 agents under one roof, and we had a lot of clients that did all SMS and cold calling. And the market has pivoted. I don't want to get into SMS and cold call, but SMS is, in my opinion, it's basically dead. There's so many restrictions, 10 DLC and stuff like that. Yeah. Cold calling is still active and alive. But now that the carriers and iPhone and Android and all of them, they're now implementing new filtration systems, like to where it's not even going to dial your phone. It's just going to go to what is the purpose of you calling, right? When I don't recognize a number on my phone, it doesn't ring for me anymore. So when it comes to cold calling, even if it is from your own personal cell phone, cold calling is not as strong as it used to be. 5 years ago, 10 years ago, Jesus, you could literally just build a business in an hour. You don't have to attach an LLC, no EIN, nothing. You can literally have like ghost phone numbers and just mass dial and text tens of thousands of people a day.
Oh yeah, the text blasting, it was insane. It was like 5,000, 7,000, 10,000 like you're saying, and there was no rules. It was the wild, wild west. Nothing was put in place yet, and the people who got to go through that, man, talk about some cheap marketing.
Like nice. I miss it. I miss it. So anyway, to my point is that now when I say there's the sweat equity path and then there's the marketing path. And the sweat equity path is going to mean you're going to have to pick up your phone. You're going to be having to dial 75 different phone numbers every single day, hoping to God that person is going to answer the phone, or you're going to be having to go door knock, or you're going to be having to send direct mail. But either way, you're going to sit down, watch TV, and you're going to be writing out handwritten letters, right? And there is a way to be successful there. It's primarily door knocking, by the way, wink, wink. Like that's going to be your highest amount of success. If you can target niche data like foreclosures and things like that, you still have a very high likelihood of getting a deal through the sweat equity path. I would say this, if you have no money, you ask your question, what would I recommend? If you have no money, I would find a pre-foreclosure list or a notice of trustee sale, AKA it's the same thing. The notice of default is the earlier stage of foreclosure and the notice of trustee sale is the later stage. I would try to find both of those lists and I would market to those people. I would cold call, I would double dial, I would SMS them, even if it doesn't go through. What I even do, I would even text them first. Hey, this is Jeremy. I have a question about your property on 123 Main Street. And remember, this is from your own personal cell phone, so it's allowed. You can do that. If it was an SMS service or your CRM, I wouldn't do that. I'd be a little bit more careful. But then by saying, hey, this is Jeremy, when you call, it's going to show up on their phone that this is maybe Jeremy calling. So now it's like, oh, okay, maybe they might answer, right? So I'd start with that. Then I would go to direct mail. Okay. Again, sending out some letters, handwritten letters, do whatever you can to make yourself stand out from the other mailer pieces, put on lipstick and literally kiss the envelope, do whatever you have to do. Okay. And then from there, you're going to go door knock in your local market. Now, if your local market is not a viable market, if you're in some rural podunk village, then maybe find a virtual market, and door knocking is not going to be the answer here. And then in that case, Now let's pivot to the other fork in the road. The other side of the fork is now you've got capital saved up.
Yeah. And real quick, Jeremy, before we hit to that other fork with your door knocking guys, I suggest this to a lot of people who give me a call and they're just not ready for my direct mail services, is bring sticky notes. You can order pre-made sticky notes that have the same message on them. I'm interested in talking about your property. Please call me with your phone number. Very simple. And put a sticky note on their door. Okay.
You guys sell that, by the way? I would hope you guys do.
Yeah.
You guys, yeah, you do. Okay.
We do. Yeah. So you can call us. We got a sticky, you can tell us, we can put a little note on there. We have oversized sticky notes as well, so we can get a little bit of a bigger message. And it's crazy cheap. You can order a booklet of 100 of them for $10. Like the shipping's probably going to cost the same as it does just to make it and then send it your way. And now you have 100 leads. So if they don't answer, you're still putting that sticky note on there. They're still going to read it at some point. They have your contact information. And the beautiful thing about physical pieces when you're marketing is they may not call you that day, but they can be like, I'm going to save this. They can stick it on the fridge, put it on the counter, put it in the junk drawer. They're going to hold on to that. And with writing your own mail, just writing it yourself is huge. Your handwritten font is going to go a long way. If you don't have the best handwriting, find somebody who does. All right. And like Jeremy said, put some lipstick on it, give it a kiss, put a sticker on it, put something that stands out that's you. If you got a stamp that's made with like your logo on it and you stamp it, and then right there, that's going to be something that if you send those over time, they're going to start building trust, curiosity. They're going to want to call you, meet you, and then you can build that relationship. And it's all about that first interaction relationship. Just make a friend with the person. Don't jump straight into business, and just let them know you're local and you're here to help. And that's going to go a long way with that style of marketing.
Yep, exactly right. It's remember, guys, when it comes to, we call it sniper focused or niche data, it is not about making the offer as fast as you can. It's about building rapport. It's about actually becoming a friend to them. They're dealing with financial issues. They always are. That's what we're targeting, right? We're targeting distress, whether it be a distressed property or a distressed lifestyle. We're targeting one or the other or both. Our goal is to become a friend of theirs first. We want to build a rapport. We want to build that trust. I will tell you this, I've made millions of dollars by being the person that offers less, but they trust more.
Yes.
Okay. So that's the key there. But so to continue on with the fork in the road, the other way is you've got capital. And I say this to a lot of my students. I will actually not even take your money if you, first of all, you don't display to me you've got the energy and the drive, number one. And number two is I explain, even on the call that I have with my students, I go, just so if you have no money for marketing, you have the lowest likelihood of success, just on statistics alone, because you are going to burn out. You are going to get exhausted. The minute that you get your first lead and you're giving your first offer and you get your first contract and then title issues arise and you realize the deal's dead, your motivation collapses, right? In my business for my team, I actually have one of my core values is absolute resilience. We have to understand that we are going to take baseball bats to the face every single day, right? And that's the most important part about not just wholesaling, but entrepreneurship in general. The other thing we have to remind ourselves is that as we are dealing with properties or people that are going through distress situations, they're not always the healthiest mindset, right? So they might be putting you into tough situations. They might be asking extra things from you, or you might be dealing with a hoarder house or meth contamination or whatever it is. Guys, the profit you make in this business is directly proportional to the problems that you solve. You are now becoming a garbage man, right? You are dealing with garbage that a realtor, a broker cannot fix.
Yes.
So we are dealing with the slime, the sludge, the sewage, right? That's what we are dealing with. And we've got to get dirty and just be aware that when you get into the sewer, it's going to stink. And you have to be aware of that going forward. To kind of like go back to my point, if you have capital saved up, here's what I would say. If you could afford a couple $1,000s every month, save it up. Like save up for 6 months or a year until you can have a 6-month runway. That is going to exponentially improve your chances towards success just because you are not putting yourself in the lead generation seat. You are having the leads get generated automatically. And then all you have to do are qualify the leads and start giving offers, right? Yeah. It just makes this so much easier.
And Jeremy, let's put that in layman's terms, all right? So with that, I know we got some viewers that are going to be on here who are really fresh. So let's turn around. Let's put that in some really basic language.
Sure. When we talk about the conveyor belt, right? This business is a conveyor belt. It's an assembly line, okay? And the very first seat on that conveyor belt is what we call lead gen or lead generation. This is the diet that feeds your business, right? If you do not have leads, you have no one to talk to. You have no offers to give. So you have to start generating leads in the first place. And in that seat, imagine that seat is sitting right in front of you. Somebody or something needs to sit in that seat for you, okay? If it's you, you're going to be sitting in that seat. You're going to be picking up your cell phone. You're going to be cold calling. You're going to be doing all the things that we talked about to try to generate a lead. However, if you have money that you are able to invest, you could hire a virtual assistant, someone from Egypt, someone from the Philippines, someone from Costa Rica that will literally sit in that seat for you. And you just basically hire a multi-line dialer, and then you just give them a list. You're going to pull a list of information, addresses, and phone numbers. You're going to hand it off to them, and they're going to be dialing 8 hours a day, generating leads on autopilot. Then that's okay, great. Congratulations. You've now filled that seat. Obviously, we talked about cold calling not being the best strategy now. So instead of, let's say you're not hiring a VA and you're not doing a multi-line dialer, but instead you're doing a direct mail campaign. Okay. So now you're utilizing direct mail, where direct mail is being sent out on an automatic campaign every few days, every couple of weeks, whatever the cadence is. And then you're going to start receiving phone calls from those people that receive your mailers. That is still lead generation being done for you. And then now you are basically straddling two different positions on the conveyor belt after this. The first one is lead follow-up. And then the second one is acquisitions or being a closer. And really what that conveyor belt looks like is lead generation generates leads. Then you have to qualify those leads. Some of those leads are going to be qualified on day one and they're going to be ready for an offer. Yep. That needs to go directly to your closer, your acquisition person. And more than likely, that's going to be you in the beginning, okay? That's the person that has to make the offer. But now let's say that lead doesn't have enough motivation to sell today. They're not ready. They want to sell in maybe 3 months or 6 months or a year or even more. That is where a lead manager now falls into place. Now, a lead manager's job is to follow up with leads until they are ready to say, yes, I'm raising my hand. I am looking to sell now. What you do in the beginning is you are going to be straddling the lead manager and the acquisition/closer role 50-50. You're going to be calling leads, qualifying them, trying to give offers, and the leads that don't have an offer ready, you're going to be following up a week, 2 weeks, month later.
And with this, guys, a lot of information Jeremy's thrown at you, and it's crazy valuable. So pause this, rewind this, re-listen to it, take some good notes. You got to be organized. If you're not organized, you're going to fail. In trying to figure out, well, how am I going to organize this? What system should I use? We have CRMs, guys, so that can manage it. You can get a really cheap CRM, but also you can, at the beginning, you will be able to manage this yourself on a simple Excel sheet. And guys, go on an AI bot, ask it for some recommendations, tell it everything that Jeremy's saying right now, and say, how do I organize this? Can you build me out a template? Can you give me a layout of a great way to organize this? And it's a free tool, and it'll spit out documents for you. It'll create an Excel sheet for you. It'll create what we call buckets in our world, where you have the 1 month follow-up bucket, 2 month, 3 months, 6 months, where, as Jeremy was saying, the person might not be ready right now. Like, we were thinking about selling, but it's January right now. We want to let our kid graduate from high school in May. So, okay, they're going to be in the 6 month bucket. And getting that organization, AI is a powerful thing. Let it help you at the beginning. When you do ramp up and you do get busy and this thing does take off, then you can do more paid for services and let other people run that seat for you, or let a technology sit in that seat for you.
Yeah, exactly right. And to kind of like wrap up the whole point I was making there was that lead follow-up honestly is probably the hardest part of this job. Mm-hmm. It takes the most amount of energy. It takes the longest amount of follow-up. You'll follow up with some little old lady for 6 months, and then finally she sells to an agent or sells with an agent, and you just go, mm-hmm. right? Lead follow-up is probably the hardest thing, and that's where the next stage is going to be replacing you on that seat. That's where you typically will have a lead manager. You could also call them a junior acquisition, because then your goal is to train them to eventually give offers just like you are right now. And then finally, once you get the contract, then we move towards transaction coordination and finally dispo, or finding the buyer. Most wholesalers should kind of sit in that dispo seat for as long as they can, because that's building out relationships with buyers. To be honest, like I love doing email blasts. Don't get me wrong. It's so much fun. But it's also a lot easier just to send a text to a friend that's a buyer and say, hey, I got another deal. You ready to buy it? Great. It just makes things a lot easier. So as I was saying, guys, the conveyor belt is lead generation, lead follow-up, acquisitions, transaction coordination, and dispo. And a fully operational or a fully functioning operational wholesale structure, you're going to have someone in each of those seats.
Yeah.
And you will never be able to step away until you do. And once you do, and you have everyone in that seat, that's where, we talked about this before, your metrics, your KPIs become so important, because now you got to make sure that you're hitting your margins, you're making the money to pay your team. But yeah, for right now, for all you guys beginning, you don't have to think about any of that stuff. You just need to think about, how are you going to generate leads? Is it going to be your time spent, or is it going to be your money spent? And I'm going to lean towards try to make it your money spent, but just have a good sales process. Know how to underwrite your numbers, know how to give your offers, know how to talk to the seller and set expectations. So yeah.
Yeah, and on all the fuzzy parts here, guys, that you're like, I don't quite understand what Jeremy's saying. Guys, you're going to be able to reach out to him. You're going to be able to talk to him. You can get in contact with me, with him, and we can go more in depth, and we can give you more knowledge. In terms of a few things that I've been storing in my head for the last couple minutes while Jeremy's been explaining this, if you need a targeted list, like how do I know what house door to go knock on and put that sticky note on, or who I send a mailer to? Those are things that like we specialize in. We can teach you how to pull a list. You can get a super cheap subscription to a database for like $20-$30 a month, and you can go in. And then as Jeremy was saying, you could put me in that seat, but I'm going to cost more money because now I'm going and pulling that professional list for you. But either way, you have resources. When it does come time for that disposition, reach out. Once again, we provide lists for finding the houses. Well, we also have a huge list and network of people who are looking to buy, and they're wanting to try and buy all the time. I can get you a big list of those people to reach out. They're going to love when they get your call. And then it's really important to build a relationship there. You want long-term relationships once you find a buyer, because then they're going to be calling you and they're going to be like, hey, you got a new property? Yeah, I'm ready to buy. And you already have that hard part set up, is once you get that property, getting rid of it. Jeremy, real quick, I want to transition over to creative finance and what that's looking like here in 2026. What is the time frame that you see wholesalers, when you work with them, living through the scenario we just said, where they're really in that grind? Obviously, we're not going to be in that grind forever. Nobody would do that for 30 years straight, 40 years straight. So what's the typical time frame that a new person should expect to be in that hard grind before they have enough cash flow to start putting other people in those seats and living that life that you see the guru on Instagram on the yacht saying it's easy?
All right. So, okay, there's a few different layers I can peel back on that. Number one is, in my opinion, the grind as an entrepreneur, the grind never really stops.
No,
okay? So
but it changes. It changes.
Yeah, it changes, exactly. So number one, if you are the solopreneur, you are by yourself, right? For me, when I started wholesaling, I knew right away, I'm like, oh, no. I'm not going to be doing this myself. I'm going to be looking to scale as fast as possible, which is why I hired VAs. And then those VAs, I hired them from a service. My VAs became the highest performing VAs because I was training them, which then stemmed in my brain, hey, maybe I start a VA business. So I did that. And that was, again, it was almost like a flywheel effect, that while I'm working with my VAs, I'm getting them better at doing their job. I'm also building out a VA operation where now I'm seeing all of the market data from across the nation from all of my clients and how they're performing. I'm able to see the markets perform and all that stuff. So anyway, aside from that, what you're going to be wanting to do is this. You want to get your first big deal. Okay. Now, what I say is, in my opinion, anything below $10,000 is not a good deal. No offense. Don't get me wrong. Like if you're in areas of Ohio or Illinois or Indiana where a $10,000 assignment fee is like 50% of the value of the home, you got to live there, right? You got to deal with that.
Yeah.
But if you're marketing to say a median household price, $500,000. I'm using it for a round number, okay? And I know that maybe $400,000 I think is like the median household price across the nation right now, but let's just say $500,000. All I need to do is find one seller that is willing to come down 10% lower than what they would normally need to sell, and I now have a $50,000 assignment.
Yeah.
And when you learn about correct forms of marketing and you are talking to the right traffic, you are talking to the right people, you are going to get more opportunities. And everyone always says, like when they're beginning, they go, why would somebody sell at such a discount? Because you don't know what distress they're going through, right? And when you are targeting people that are in distress, if you are targeting people that are on Zillow that have been listed for 30 to 60 days, the level of distress is absolute zero. There's very, very little motivation. But if, I'll give you a great example, it's $300 less than a $200,000 check. I save it next to my computer to remind me to do better to get to the $200,000. But that was one deal that we did. It was a meth house, and the seller had gone to jail, and they got out of jail. They were living night to night in motels, and they come to me and they're like, hey, I need to sell my property. I'm running out of money and I have no place to live. The house is condemned. We can't go back into it. Would you make me an offer? So I said, yeah, absolutely. What price? And she goes, would you buy it for $270? And I said, unfortunately, I can't do that. I'm sorry. Because the house is condemned, I'm not even allowed to step foot into the property. I can't see what the condition is. I have no idea what I'm getting into. I wish I could. Can you do a little bit better for me? She goes, okay, how about 140? I go, okay.
Oh, sure. Where do I sign?
Right. Yeah. So 140, we put about $120,000 into it. That brought us to 260 and we sold it for 500.
There you go.
Right. So that's about a $200,000 pop after closing costs, commissions, and fees. And you only get that by finding motivated sellers. Right. And that's targeting specific lists. That's targeting the contamination list from your local county. Right. That's what that is. So anyway, so to my point, if we look at running a wholesale operation early on as a business and not as a hobby or not as a hustle or a side hustle, we look at it as running a business. What would I do? If I had no money in my bank account right now, I would focus on doing everything I could to close at least one deal. Even if that deal is $10,000, I would go, great. Now I have $10,000 that I'm going to invest into marketing. And the way we can see this is this. Guys, I'm going to go a little bit mathematical on you here. I'm going to talk slower so you guys can follow. If your average leads to contract is, say, 15 leads, okay? And that's kind of for inbound marketing, that's usually right around average. I'd say 12 to 20, but depending on the market you're in, let's just say, again, round numbers, we're at 15 leads equals one contract. Now, to be clear, okay, full transparency, a contract doesn't necessarily equate to a close, right? So we still have another metric we have to follow that even though it's a contract, some of them might fall out of contract, some of them might have title issues, whatever that is. But regardless, for the sake of this argument, let's say it's 15 leads equals one deal, okay? So now we want to identify, depending on the market you're in, how much does it cost to generate one lead? Smaller markets are going to be cheaper. More competitive markets are going to be more expensive, right? And if we start to identify that, let's say let me ask you this. What would you say your average cost per lead is right now from a direct mail standpoint? I know it's broad, but what would you say?
So I got people, like you said, in smaller markets, we're getting leads for as little as $60 a lead. Also, keep in mind, we've been in that area for a year, so we have some compound interest working for us. But I got places, I got Maricopa County, Arizona. Talk about a tough market. We're at $600 a lead. And that's one of my most expensive places I live in for finding leads. But looking percentage-wise, since we're on a math conversation, when we do a fix and flip in Maricopa County, we're mad if we're not making $120,000 on the deal.
Exactly.
Where in my smaller market, my South Carolina, like Anderson, Greenville, those little tiny ones that are floating around, the entire population's like 10,000 per county. We're totally okay with a $5,000, $10,000 wholesale and only a $25,000 to $35,000 fix and flip. And they're happy with that. That's normal. So there's definitely a percentage that plays into there. You play in the big leagues where the big areas are and the big wins are, it's going to cost you more because there's a lot of people that want to jump into that world. If you go in the less desirable areas, your leads are going to be a lot cheaper, but also your return is going to, at the same time, not be like some insane amount of money.
Yeah, exactly right. So I'm glad you said that. So it's anywhere from 60 to 600, right? At one point, I was paying $1,000 for a lead. It was not pretty. I did not enjoy it. I would say that while we were sustainable, it was not something I would want to do for long periods of time. Okay. No. Especially think about this. If it's 15 leads, that's $15,000 cost per deal. And if I'm trying to get a 3x margin, that means that at average, I have to make $45,000 assignments every single deal I do. Yep. That doesn't happen, right? Sometimes it's going to be less than that. yeah. So what I wanted to talk about here is like, let's get down to the numbers. Let's just say $200 average cost per lead. Okay, we're using, again, round numbers, and we know that it's 15 leads equals one deal. That is $3,000 cost per deal.
Yeah.
Did the math right, guys? So $200 times 15, that's $3,000.
And that's very
So now we know.
Very average.
Yeah, very average, right. So it cost me $3,000 to get one deal. Now the question is, can I make at least $9,000 on that deal? Chances are, yeah, you probably should be able to. As long as you're not on market dealing with Zillow listings, you should be able to, unless again, you're in Gary, Indiana, where you can buy a house for $5,000. You're more than likely going to make between $5,000 to $15,000 pretty easily off of just one wholesale deal. So now you spent $3,000 to get that deal, and now you have $10,000 in the bank. Now you're going to double your marketing. You're going to be doing that more. You're going to scale more. Now, instead of getting one $10,000 deal, you're now getting two $10,000 deals. So now you've got $20,000 in your bank account from only spending $6,000 total. This is how you scale. And I want you guys to start wrapping your head around the idea of it is not a scary thing to invest money into marketing. It is the natural evolution of a wholesaler. And if you are fearful of actually spending money on marketing, it's because you are afraid yourself of actually locking up the deal. You might not have a strong sales process, like I said earlier, and that's what the investor semester is all around. And by the way, I talked about freshman, sophomore, junior. I didn't even talk about senior. Senior is like the top level. That's where we're talking about payroll. That's where we're talking about tax incentives and strategies and things like that. Again, it's freshman. Let's learn the foundations of marketing. Right? Let's learn about how to underwrite, how to comp, how to give offers, the basics of sales. Sophomore moves into the slightly higher acquisition strategies, things like novations. Don't worry, guys, we're not there yet. We're not going to talk about that. But it's the better strategies, as well as scaling your marketing and actually building out a repeatable system that you can essentially close your eyes and it will run on autopilot. That's when you're going to start hiring the people for the conveyor belt. Junior year is where you are now going to start focusing on creative deals. And I have a rule about creative deals, guys. And boy, this is a very long-winded loop around back to creative. I do not talk about creative finance in front of the children, meaning I do not talk about creative finance in front of my new students, and I do not talk about creative finance in front of my acquisition managers, because creative finance becomes a crutch. It becomes an easier conversation. Why would I want to give a lowball cash offer that the seller is going to tell me to F off and die versus, well, why don't I give you a creative offer and offer to pay you more? Yeah. But like I said, if you do not have consistent active income coming into your business that can actually fund your creative deals, you will be running out of money quickly. And I'd rather, for me, we just talked about the metrics of marketing, and you can expect at a minimum, most of the time, if you're doing this effectively, a 3x return. So if you have $10,000 you can spend, you should be expecting a $30,000 profit. Follow me so far, guys? All right. So if you have $50,000, think about what that can mean for active income. That can mean you're making $150,000 off of $50,000 of marketing versus, yay, I just bought a subject to deal that's making me $200 a month, right? Like the ego loves it. The ego loves building the portfolio. And I know I'm a victim to it myself. I bought properties that I probably shouldn't have. While granted, all the properties are still good properties, I probably shouldn't have because I took money out of our marketing expenses where I could have just put it into more marketing and scaled my business faster. Yeah. Okay, so where creative finance is in 2026 is this. If you are not learning how to market to the right sellers, where you're finding the right interest rates or you're finding the high equity sellers, you are now forced to buy properties that are in the 6 to 7 to 8% interest range, which do not cash flow. I hate to say it. There's a reason why co-living is becoming something a little bit more popular that we're seeing now, which I am not a big fan of co-living. If you're not familiar with what that is, it is essentially turning a single family residence into a motel. Okay, it's taking a 4-bedroom house, adding a couple of extra walls, adding a couple of extra bathrooms if you could, and you're gonna try to make that into an 8-bedroom motel. And from a cash flow perspective, that's awesome. Like if you can have 100% of your rooms rented and occupied at $800 a month, you're making a lot of money doing that. But what you're also doing is you're running a motel. You are now running a hospitality service. And if your code enforcement, if your local zip code finds out that you're past the maximum occupancy, you're going to get shut down. So now you've got to spend money to convert it back to being a single family residence. chances are it's not going to cash flow any longer. You're going to be negative. You're going to default. You're going to go through foreclosure. And probably, if you took it over creatively, you're probably putting that seller at risk and not you. So you're going to default. Their credit's going to get screwed. Their property is going to go to foreclosure, and everybody loses. What I say to everybody here is this. Creative finance is awesome. I love it. It's my love child. It's my affair. I love it on this side of the room. But if you do not have the capital to be able to protect that property, if you're missing payments, you're screwed. Or if you don't have it at the right interest rate and you can't make it cash flow as a long-term rental, don't do it. But there are a few other strategies. There are Airbnb, which we know doesn't perform well like it used to, right? COVID is done and gone. Airbnb is now more restrictive. It's not working the same way it used to. We've got midterm rentals like insurance rentals or traveling nurses. Again, that's a little bit more of a thing of the past. But if you're going to be getting into midterm rentals, that's a business now. You're actually building a corporate rental business where you have to deal with corporations and actually have to find insurance companies that need to rehouse families with a flood or a fire, things like that. Now it becomes, again, its own business. So you're no longer an investor. You're now a business operator just to make the properties be able to cash flow and work for you. So it's pushing a square peg through a round hole, basically.
Yeah, and understanding the difference between active income and passive income. So the goal here as an investor is to create as much passive income as we can. There's always going to be active income, but don't purposely put yourself into that position if you don't have to.
Yep, exactly right. So to kind of like wrap it up with creative finance, like I can go into 1,000 different strategies of how to buy properties, but just to really talk about it to your listeners that you guys are actually tuning in. If you've actually stuck through this episode so far, congratulations. It's nice to still have you here. But yeah, it's creative finance, guys. It doesn't work unless you find the right sellers. And it comes out to targeting. And that's where, again, why the investor semester, I created it with such a strength around the foundation of marketing, is that when you join a guru community and they teach you just to pick up your phone and call Zillow listings, what are they doing? They're teaching you, they're having you take action. I love that. I love taking action, but they're trying to get the lowest barrier of entry. They're trying to create the lowest amount of friction to get you into their pipeline so that you could eventually maybe join their program or spend money. And that's why, hey, we're going to run a challenge about how to call Zillow listings. That drives me nuts because I would much rather the time spent talking to Zillow agents that are not motivated and sellers that are not motivated. I'd rather have you spend a little bit more time learning how to target specific types of lists, specific types of sellers, and actually start building the business out right. The truth is, you will not make your money in this business unless you are buying at the right price. It's not about the selling or the exit strategy. It's about getting the deal at a discount. And that's how I've made all my money, is finding sellers that are distressed and buying properties from them. It's as simple as that.
Yeah. And if you're at the point where you have been wholesaling, everything we've talked about, you've gone through, you've learned, you've figured it out, and you are ready to take it to the next level and you're interested in creative finance, definitely reach out to Jeremy. He's one of the best in the business. He works nationwide. He's phenomenal. And like he said, he's not going to get too deep into it because you could take the conversation in 27 different ways. You honestly can. And that's why it's called creative, because whatever you can think of, if it can work on paper, if it can work in the contract, you can make it work. And it's just a simple agreed upon between you and the seller. And if everybody agrees and it works on paper, it can work. And he would love to talk about it forever and go into it and look at what your style is, what your strengths are, look at your community, look at all the rules and everything in your zip codes, and then at that point lead you in the right direction. So if you're ready for that conversation, I highly, highly recommend that you reach out to him. He'd be an amazing asset for you.
I love it, man. Thank you. And if I'll just say, I'll point you guys in a direction. We've got a free Facebook group. Just look up the Investor Semester on Facebook. Also on your favorite podcast platform or on YouTube, look up the Investor Semester as well. If you guys like watching YouTube and video podcasts just like this, I'd love to have you guys in my YouTube and subscribe. Like I said, guys, the last thing I'll say is this. Depending on the level of education you're looking for, we really want to try to provide as much free value firsthand. And my goal is I want to try to do deals with my students. And if I can get my students to not waste money on education, but actually invest money in marketing, that's my goal. What I say to everybody is this. I go, if you want to work with me either one-on-one or you want to join the next semester or become a varsity student, I want to have a conversation with you and I want to make this work for you financially. And now, will I bend over? I'm not going to do it for free. I've got resources for that, But if you actually want to become a real student, I'm going to try to make this work for you financially, because I'll say this. If I took your savings right now and that was chopping you off at the knees, and now you're not able to invest in the systems, the software, and the marketing, I'm actually doing you a disservice. I would rather have you be successful with me and actually invest correctly into the right styles of marketing than for me to ever take $1 of your money until you're ready. I will say that is that if you guys want to work with me, I would love to have a conversation, but at bare minimum, join our Facebook group and listen to the podcast.
And to go with the rest of that is, if you do have the money to do a coaching program and you're kind of like, well, I could sink that money into marketing. Jeremy just talked about how we need to have money for marketing. Guys, if you don't know what you're doing with your marketing and you don't know what you're doing for your outreach to find these properties, your education is going to be so much more expensive doing trial and error by yourself instead of just going to an expert who's done the trial and error since 2012. He has the experience. He has spent his money to figure out how to do it correctly, and he wants to share that knowledge with you. So it'll be way cheaper to pay a little money towards the coaching program instead of trial and error money.
Yeah.
Now,
can I add one more thing? I just realized I should probably add this. I want to backtrack here about 10 minutes, and I just one more thing I want to add. When we were talking about the average cost per deal, right? We were talking about that $3,000 price point.
Yeah.
Guys, I want to just preface something real fast. If you've got $3,000 a month to spend, congratulations. That's awesome. I'm proud of you. You could potentially, based off those metrics, you can get one deal a month. But if you only have $1,000 a month that you can spend, we are not in a sprint. This is a marathon. And it's okay if it takes you 3 months to get your first deal. If you can only afford $1,000 a month or even $500 a month, just use the math. How long would it take you at $500 a month? It would take you 6 months. If $500 a month is realistic, I'd rather have you spend $500 a month than no money at all and never gain traction and never get that deal. So again, it's math. Just break it down. However much money you have per month, you can just divide that amongst how many leads you need, and that's it.
Yeah, and then if in that scenario at the end of 6 months you get that deal and you've invested $3,000, you make a $10,000 assignment fee. That's not your money. Have that in your mind. You're not going to go buy a new watch. You're not going to go upgrade your car. You're not going to go buy a big screen. That money goes back into your business. Now, you will eventually take some of those funds, you'll eventually take some of that money and go play with it and go have fun and go enjoy your life. That's why we're doing this. We don't want to be trapped in the W-2 job. We don't want somebody else picking how much money we can make. But at the beginning, that's not your money until you're established. Then you can start playing with it. I see too many people, they land a deal and then they spend half of it and now they're back at square one. And they got to go through the first 6 months again. Don't do that to yourself.
Yeah. Oh, and then taxes. We forget about that.
Yeah. Well, Jeremy, you were phenomenal. A great education. I love it. Guys, if you like what you heard today, REI Smart Talk, we do this all the time. Myself, along with 13 other coaches in the building, are always reaching out. We're networking with all of our friends across the nation. We're out here to educate you guys. There's a link below. Click it, subscribe to it. You'll get all of our content. You'll be able to see all of it. There's plenty of other videos to watch. And then hopefully you guys can catch our next one. If you got any questions, feel free to reach out to REIPrintMail. Like I said, go to our Investor Semester on Facebook. You can reach out to Jeremy. We'd love to help you and talk more about this if you have some additional questions.
And my Instagram, by the way, is the Jeremy Davis.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, Jeremy, thank you very much. Everybody, have a great time, and we will see you next time.